Welcome to the new edition of the show from the heart of Europe, this time in English. 27th January marks the 78th anniversary of the liberation of the Nazi concentration camp Auschwitz-Birkenau. Millions of Jewish women, men and children, as well as all other victims, were murdered during the Holocaust. On the occasion of the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, which we mark on the 27th January during this plenary week in Strasbourg, Croatian MEP Željana Zovko, who is also Vice Chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee and Vice Chair of the political group of the European People's Party in the European Parliament, organized the presentation of the book Path of the Righteous, Stories of Heroism, Humanity and Hope, and a panel discussion with the author Ari Mittelman. And it is our honor to have the author of the book with us just an hour before the presentation in the European Parliament. Welcome, Mr. Ari Mittelman.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
With us is the host of the presentation, Croatian MEP Željana Zovko. Welcome.
Thank you.
And former Croatian Minister of Science, Education and Sports and medical doctor Dragan Primorac. Welcome as well.
Thank you for the invitation.
Once again, welcome to the European Parliament in Strasbourg, and we start with the host, Mrs. Zovko. How did this presentation of Mr. Mittelman's book come about? What is the goal of the presentation?
Right. For a while, I've been presenting and explaining during the pedagogy work how little the whole history of the anti-Semitism in Europe and also the presentation of Israel here in European Parliament is being done, and the bad image that we have often found ourselves confronted with, and we have to defend on various occasions the facts that we know about the situation in which Jewish people found themselves during the Second World War, and that they are living even now today in Europe and in the world. I was fascinated with the book and especially with the fact that Mr. Ari Mittelman has included the story of our well-known and esteemed former minister and also doctor and scientist, Mr. Dragan Primorac, on the relations between Croatia and Israel, the ones that he has contributed so greatly to build the bridges, and on the suggestion also from Dr. Primorac, I embraced the idea to have the presentation here in the Parliament. But basically, this is there are various factors that contributed to this to this event.
Choose 8 non-Jewish leaders to be the main figures of your book.
Well, several questions there, and thank you again for the invitation. It is a tumultuous and turbulent time. It's an exciting time to be in Europe because it seems like every day we're just deepening the bonds between the United States and Europe, and that's so important as this horrible war in Ukraine grinds on. And I'm just so grateful for our partners in Croatia and across Europe for deepening these bonds. I did not set out to write a book. I began the book, frankly, looking for inspiration and for hope. I'm originally from Pennsylvania. In October of 2018, on the last Saturday of that month, 11 innocent Pennsylvanians who do something I do every day, they went to their house of worship and they were killed. And it was an incredibly emotional time, and I was just looking for inspiration. I think we all know good, decent people who speak up and speak out when they see hatred and they see bigotry in society. Unfortunately, we probably can think of 10 people or 20 people who just say, it's not my problem, and they look the other way. It was important, but it also made logical sense for me to feature Dr. Primorac. I just think of everything he accomplished before the age of 40. I just turned 40 actually this month. Before the age of 40, to achieve multiple degrees from American University, from Croatian University, but more so to take the entire, at that point, relatively new country of Croatia to a different level, modeling it after a country I love so much, the United States, and also another country I love so much after Israel. I just found that incredibly inspiring.
Thank you, Mr. Mittelman. One of the chosen leaders in your book is sitting next to you, and with us today, Dragan Primorac, former Croatian Minister of Science and Education. In the book, Mr. Primorac is presenting as a medical doctor. He helped his country uncover its past and, in the process, from a new unbreakable alliance. What impressed you and what was crucial for Mr. Primorac to be in your book, Mr. Mittelman?
As I mentioned, I just think every day we're confronted with choices. Dr. Primorac studied at a great university in the United States. It would have been very easy and understandable to stay in the United States, to return to his homeland several times a year. He came back. He helped build up, modeled after the American system, modeled after the European system, the Israeli system, world-class healthcare, world-class education system, and you know, frankly, as countries today, and certainly then in Europe, were doing the opposite with Israel, saying we don't want to associate with Israel. He deepened ties with Israel. That's very important to me. And I think it's, we've seen this is the benefit to both the Israeli people and the Croatian people.
Mr. Primorac, you are one of the non-Jewish leaders of Mr. Mittelman's book. It is certainly a great honor. However, I suppose it is also an obligation. What does it mean for you to be mentioned together with other righteous people from all over the world? What does it mean to be a righteous person in these uncertain times, Mr. Primorac?
Thank you. If you're doing things with your heart, if you're thinking about that you have to do something because it's representing who you are and it's something what you believe, if you're doing something that you deeply, deeply believe there's a thing that should be done by others, you're just coming to the position that you cannot be quiet when things which are not acceptable today are just happening around us. And since, I would say, last 28 years, I'm deeply involved in the many, many activities linked with Israel. There's a lot of similarities between our countries. I remember the early 90s when I was a young postdoctoral fellow and when I received a call from Croatia, and it was very, very dramatic situation where you're having so many mass graves in the Republic of Croatia, so many innocent people killed. And during that time I had few mentors who are Jews. And they remember the days from the Second World War. They spoke with me. And they helped me tremendously to establish the first laboratory capable of doing identification of skeletal remains by DNA technology in the war during that time. So for me it was extremely emotional because they came from the United States. They were walking with me in the landmines field, digging the victims and trying to establish identity, because they believe in what I'm doing. And I remember that for the rest of my life. When we spoke, we have as a scientist commitment that we will do all possible to identify every single innocent victim, but also to find those people who committed a crime, because we would like to send a message. There's nobody anymore that can commit a crime and to be hidden. So that's how everything started. And since that period, so many things happened. I became a young scientist working closely with Israelis. I met the Prime Minister, Ariel Sharon, who was a wonderful man, helping tremendously. Actually, that's what Ari did in the book, describing how we start this relationship. And so many things that we can discuss later on.
Knowing we are not alone in this battle is critical, isn't it, Mrs. Zovko?
It's critical, but most of all, it's necessary to show through the simple stories, like the stories that Ari Mittelman has shown in his book, that there are people who are brave enough to raise up and to stand up for somebody who is different, for minorities, to fight the prejudices, to fight the lies, to fight attacks as well. And specifically the fact that we have people from all the continents representing in this book and from all different colors of their skin. And they're beautiful stories in how they stood up in their own societies with their example is a guideline for us, is this light that Ari Mittelman has said in the beginning that we all need in this darkness that we are going through, this terrible tunnel of darkness, that people are becoming more and more scared of what the future brings, and people are getting scared with all the wars that we are seeing, and for someone like Dr. Primorac, who has been through the war, for me the worst moments are to imagine that maybe once again we will have people who are in minority somewhere who will suffer just because they are different. And we are showing with this example that there must be this silent majority who will stand up and who will not allow this anti-Semitism or anti-anything to prevail in the society. We need society where people accept the other one, freedom of belief, freedom of religion, freedom of worship, and freedom of, as well, of their own history, and to respect and to talk, to communicate, and not to be subject to violence and the masses that we are now seeing. It's happening even on European soil.
Final message for our audience, mostly in Croatia, but also across Europe, Mr. Mittelman.
Well, I think about how much has happened on the European continent just during my lifetime, but then also since this incredible building was built. And I'm reminded of the words of President John F. Kennedy, in particular what Ms. Zovko said. And this might not be an exact quote, but he said, "It's not our job to curse the darkness, but to light a candle." In other words, as we start a new year, to be proactive and constructive. With that in mind, I was very, very surprised that two of the Americans I feature in the book, just because they're that passionate about this important work that they're doing, they flew over here from the state of Florida, which is significantly warmer than Europe nowadays. And I'm honored that they'll be joining the discussion this evening as well.
What is your message, Mr. Primorac?
I would say the most important, the future depends on what we do today. So we should be aware of extremism that is all around us. We should stop it. We should be loud. We should be united and build a better future. And I'm particularly proud and happy that Ms. Zovko and you know, other Croatians who are members of the parliament are leading this role, which is amazing. I mean, we are today talking about the future, but also what we are talking, how we should stand up and be together in fighting any kind of the extremism. I'll be flying shortly to Israel after my trip to Strasbourg. I'll be meeting the leaders of the country, and I'm very, very proud to tell you that today the ties between Croatia and Israel are stronger than ever. We stay shoulder by shoulder. We are creating the future together. In less than 1 year, 3 or 4 Nobel Prize laureates from Israel are coming to see us in Croatia. They're having one of the largest gatherings. So that's the future that I strongly believe. And there was very old say, I believe by Eleanor Roosevelt, that is telling you that our dreams are becoming the truth if we focus and we do all possible to make these dreams as reality. Shimon Peres told me once, Dragan, there is no room for small dream. Dream big. And that's exactly what is going to happen to you. So I invite all of us to dream big, to see the bright future. And that's the only way how we can have the destiny that we can predict, destiny for our kids, for our children, destiny for our countries. And I have great belief that the future of the Israel and Croatia, as well as the United States, as my second home, will stick together.
Mrs. Zovko, as a member of European Parliament, who is also active member in the interreligious and intercultural parliamentary group for dialogue, what is the creative and unique perspective you can recognize in Mr. Mittelman's book, and what can we learn for the future?
No, as a member also of European People's Party, that is Demo-Christian Party, and that it's proud of its Christian and Jewish roots of European Union, I can only say that all the people who really have a faith and who understand what history is and how the David and Goliath story has shown us that no man is small, so small that cannot stand up in front of the Goliath if he's fighting the right cause. That in every religion, the righteous man, and in Christianity, it's Good Samaritan, who was not a Christian, who helped Jesus. So I love to see the same stories in Ari Mittelman's book. I was reading it this morning when I woke up, and I was thinking, my God, he's using all the parables that my late mother used to say to me about the light, being a light in the darkness, so we are all children of Abraham, and we all have the same roots. We just have to. We all have a mission, and it's not in vain that we pass through this life without completing this mission. And it's to help the other, and it's to help the weak one, and it's to stand up to the injustice. And to fight for the right cause, fight for the truth, fight for the reconciliation, and not to allow no one to fight in the name of the religion, the war, or to cause the violence. Because really, truly, religious people are the people of the peace and the loving, and the people who are for reconciliation and building the bridges between peoples. That's why I invited Mr. Ari Mittelman here, and I just once again want to thank Mr. Dr. Dragan Primorac, who is coming from Split. Also, this is presentation of Split in a way, that the true bridges can be built with the right people who understand their role in the history and who have a true belief in their heart.
Thank you, Mrs. Zovko.